This video is entitled The Form Tag, the HTML form tag, and sending data to a server, and is a companion to Chapter 12 of the book So You Want to Learn to Use HTML and CSS. I'm Jim Renault from Shawnee State University, and I'll be taking you through this video presentation. In this video, I'm going to show you the HTML form tag. I'm going to then show you and discuss the various methods for how the form tag will send data to a web server or to the CGI script that needs to process the data. And then we'll add a submit button to a form. So in HTML, we use the form tag and its form. And all of the stuff that we're going to, all of the elements, all of the checkboxes and fill-in boxes and all of the text areas and all of those things go inside the form. That way, when we hit submit, the web browser collects all of the elements inside the form and sends those onto the web server for processing. Data elements are usually they're included in a form tag. If you're doing some fancy JavaScript stuff, sometimes you leave them out, but usually they're in a form. Two attributes are typically used and required on the form. There's the action, which is the URL to the server that's going to be catching the data, that's going to be getting and processing the data, also called the CGI script. Action can be left off and then it uses the same page, but action should always be there. And then the second attribute that should always be there is the method attribute. And the method attribute tells the web browser how to send the data. And there are two methods for sending the data, the get method and the post method. Also, in addition to the form tag on the form, you're going to need to have a submit button, and we'll show you how to do that in a few minutes. Or you can execute the submit on the form from JavaScript, but that's beyond the scope of where we are in this class. I want to talk about the two methods of sending data because they are important. The get method. Basically, the get method appends the data to the URL, appends it out here on the end of the URL, and you can see it when you go into your browser and look in the URL bar where you can see the URL. You'll often see all this gibberish and stuff out there on the end of your URL, and that's get data that's out there. So it follows the fragment part of the URL, and it starts with a question mark, and then uses key value pairs. So the name of the field equal the data in the field at, and then another key name and value separated by an equal sign and an at. So you can have multiple key value pairs listed. Now that also means that data can't have an at sign or a question mark in it or any of the other reserved URL, but the web browser will automatically convert them into percent sign hexadecimal characters or other special characters. So you don't need to worry about the user typing that. So the get string or the get method basically appends it to the URL and sends it. Now, one problem with that is the data is visible. The user can see it in the URL in the web browser, and anyone in the web, anyone who happens to be on the network or can see the network traffic can see that. Even if it's to an encrypted server, all of that data is visible. So you certainly don't want to send a password using a get method. Also, get methods are very limited in size. So if you've got any significant amount of data, you can't use a get method either. But one good thing about a get method is you can save the get method. You could make a URL with the get method, and then you could copy that and make it into a link so that that get data is sent with the URL when the user clicks on an anchor or something. So there are some reasons for using get data, but again, data is visible, the answers are visible, it's limited in size, but that's get data. The other method for sending data to a web server is called the post method. And the post method sends the data as a separate stream to the server. If the server is an encrypted server using the HTTPS protocol, that data is encrypted before it's sent across the network to the server. So it makes the data more secure. It makes the data so that large quantities of data can be sent, including images and files and lots of fields. So if you've got a large quantity of data to send, use the post method. But you can't the back buttons sometimes will freak out when you use post method. You've seen that warning pop up in your browser sometimes when you use the back button that data will be resent or something like that. And so the post method doesn't work as well with some of that kind of stuff, but it works so much better for, like I say, large data, for secure data, for images, for files. Most websites use post data. I don't know. It's kind of equal sometimes. They both just have their purpose. The last thing I want to talk about is the submit button and the reset button. You can very easily on your form just add the input type submit or input type reset. And input type submit makes a little button that says submit, and when the user mashes on that button, it'll take all the form data and send it to the server that's defined in action using the method you defined. The reset button will clear the form and return it back to the way it was when it originally loaded in from the web server. So reset clears a form. Some people put reset buttons on forms and some don't. It just kind of depends on what you want to do. It's optional, but you really do need a submit button because users are used to an OK or a submit button. If you want your submit button to say something other than submit, you can add a value attribute to the submit button with whatever text you want it to say. And usually the submit button and the reset buttons are down at the bottom of your form. This concludes video 7A or 12A in the series. I'd like to say thank you for watching. I really do appreciate you. This presentation is copyright 2020 by James Zimmerno, PhD. All rights are reserved. You can contact me at renejm.com. This work is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, non-commercial share alike 4.0 international license. And I'd again like to say thanks, and I'll see you in another presentation.